What is up, Raveraide fam? Welcome to another episode of the Raveraide podcast with your host, Tyler Hardy. And as always, I just want to take a moment to express my overwhelming love and gratitude for each and every single one of you guys who tune in on a daily and weekly basis to talk about all things Raveraide, self-improvement, spirituality, biohacking, trauma, everything that we talk about here at Raveraide with the main intention to assist you in becoming the most self-loved and self-actualized version of yourself that you can possibly be. And so hopping into today's episode, we're going to be talking about frame. And what I mean by frame is the frame in which you hold yourself in your life. You know, what are your belief systems? What is your frame? How do you feel about yourself? What's your beliefs about the world? What are your beliefs about others? Because the way that you have your frame set up really dictates everything when it comes to your life experience. And the way that the world and the universe reverberates back to you the experiences that you're meant to have in accordance with the frame that you hold yourself in. We're going to be talking about what frame is. We're going to be talking about an example of an unhealthy frame. We're going to be talking about an example of a healthy frame. And then we're going to be talking about an example of a frame that I recognized in my own life from a subconscious pattern that I was taught at a young age, and what I'm doing to recorrect that frame and live in a more healthy frame that's more suited for my highest good, so then that way I can continue to deliver for myself, deliver for you as a listener, deliver for everybody who's a fan and supporter here at Raveraide. So hopping into it, really, I kept some notes on my phone, so I might be looking down just because there's so many things to talk about with frame, and I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything, and I make sure I deliver, at the highest quality that I possibly can for you guys. So here we go. So frame is our beliefs about the world, ourselves, and others that we share this existence with. And so I can speak personally that when your frame is rooted in trauma and fear and lower vibrational frequency, it warps your entire reality. It keeps you stuck, missing opportunities, missing synchronicities, missing important interactions, or keeping you from opening yourself up fully to the wonders and the potentials of life itself. And that ultimately keeps us stuck in predictable patterns and keeps us doing the same things day in and day out that are getting us those subpar results that none of us want to have. We all want to live a happy, abundant, joyful, successful, fruitful life. And in order to do that, we have to be able to see and recognize the frame in which we live in. And for those of you guys who have never really thought about this, like this was something that when I became aware of this ideology of frame and the way we hold ourselves inside that frame, it was something that took me 6 months to really wrap my head around of like frame, like what does that mean? Like how do I hold myself? And it really came through a lot of, self-exploration, meditation to gain the awareness of like how I subconsciously carry out my life and how I'm getting the results that I'm getting for better or worse. And those same things are playing out for you. We all live inside of some sort of frame, a belief, a way of being, subconscious patterns, thoughts, and habits. That's our frame. And so when we can consciously change our frame, that's when we start getting different results and we start getting outcomes that are more suitable for what we're actually wanting for our life. And so that's really what frame is. That's the way that I view frame. And so frame creates the reverberation from the universe and ultimately dictates the experiences that we have. Like I mentioned, when you're in a place of fear, anxiety, worry, doubt, grief, lower vibrational frequency, which we've all experienced at one point or another in our life, most likely, it warps our reality. It keeps us stuck in limitation. When we're stuck in limitation, we don't see greater potentials for our existence and for our future. And as a result of that, it puts us in a place where we're not able to, live in the frame that we came here to live in. Because I do believe that we all have an ideal outcome that we choose for ourselves before we decide to take on this existence that you're experiencing now. And from there, we get to make the choices and have the free will to ultimately drive us towards that outcome or drive us away from that outcome. And that's where the free will component of it steps in. And so it all reverberates back to you because you're the vibrational center point. I've said this in so many previous episodes that you are the center point of your own universe, of the universe, because we're all one, we're all everything. We are everything in totality. And so from that standpoint, everything's reverberating back to you. So if you're holding a frame that you're not good enough, then you're going to have experiences that validate that belief system. You're going to inject fear, worry, lower vibrational frequency that is going to validate that, or it's going to block you from shining the way that you're capable of shining in this lifetime. And I can speak from that personally. I've done that so many times, and I've held myself so many times in that place where I've limited myself from having the most ideal outcome because I was getting in my own way, because that was what my frame was. My frame was that I always self-sabotage myself subconsciously from having the most fruitful relationships, or the experiences, or the financial success, or the business success, or physical health, or whatever it is that you're blocking yourself from. That was my frame. Even though it was subconscious, I wasn't waking up and saying, well, I'm just going to screw stuff up for myself. Subconsciously, I was doing that. I was limiting myself, and that was the frame that I was living in. And so I've broken down that frame. I've spent the time to heal up that frame, and I've gained the awareness over time through the things that I recommend in the Ascended Raver program, to become aware of when I'm doing that to myself, so that way I can take corrective, affirmative action to go in the opposite direction and find that more conducive, flowful, ideal outcome and frame for myself. And so moving on, frame is the foundation of all that we create for ourselves, for better and worse. Like I was just mentioning, frame comes from, our beliefs from the past, what we were taught subconsciously, around our health, around our relationships, around money, around success, around, every single thing that we have going on in our life. It was taught at some point, and that creates the frame. And if you're unconsciously living, or, subconsciously living for the most part, then you're in a place where you're carrying out a frame that was probably designed for you by other people and experiences that you maybe didn't have the conscious awareness to see that it's made such a lasting imprint in your life. And so I want you to challenge those things. I want you to ask yourself those questions, right now, is what frame do I live in? Am I living in a frame that's conducive for me? And if you're not able to identify that, then look at your life as a whole, because that is your frame. How is your physical health? How is your mental health? How are your relationship? How is your time management? How is your discipline? How is your career? Are you doing something that, really lights you up? How is your financial situation? How is your spiritual practice? Are you connected to something that's greater than yourself? Are you serving something that's greater than yourself? And you can ask yourself those things and really identify like what your current frame is. And the more honest and transparent you are with yourself, the quicker that you're going to find that frame, the quicker that you're going to be able to, identify areas in which your frame could use some work, because it's so important to have that really firm, solid foundation as we're, elevating in so many ways in our life. So then that way we're stable. So then that way we can handle, those times when we push through that upper limit, like I talked about in previous episodes. So that way we can stabilize great things as our normal way of being. So that's our norm. That's our default mode network. So then that way we can keep creating from that place and expanding upon, new heights that we hit on a regular basis. And so frame is our standards and what we expect from ourselves in all major areas of life. Frame is just another way to say our expectations are our standards for ourselves. If my frame is that I'm going to be healthy and vibrant, then that's going to require me to be in the gym, to eat healthy, to drink the right types of water, to supplement correctly, to, understand my body on a deep level. So in that way I can validate that belief system. And so it's the other side of the coin too. When we don't have frame, we're more susceptible to things that are not conducive for us. We're more likely to cheat on our diet. We're more likely to skip that gym session. We're more likely to, not do the things that we know that we need to do, because we don't live in a frame and a standard and expectation for ourselves. And so our frame is our standards, because we get our standards. We always get what we have a standard for. We don't always reach our goals, but we always get the standard. We get what we believe that we deserve in life, and that our standard is what gets us where we're going and gets us to the end result that, is in accordance with that standard and that frame. And so having a healthy frame that we determine for ourselves makes us less susceptible to the negative influence of others, whether that be parents, teachers, friends, colleagues, associates, government, whoever. When we don't have a healthy frame set up for ourselves, we become susceptible to the environment around us and the people around us and their frame and their belief system. So when they have a negative belief system, they're projecting their frame onto your frame. And if you don't have a solid frame set up, you're likely going to take on that experience. You're going to take on that frame. And that could, that could be something that plays out your entire life if you don't become aware of that. So it's really important to challenge those belief systems and ask yourself now, where did my frame come from? Is my frame taught? Is my frame subconscious from, something my parents showed me or something that, other people made me believe? And start asking those questions, because you're going to get one of two things. You're either going to get the answer as, it's not my frame, I don't believe that, I don't subscribe to that, and you find a new, healthier frame that's more conducive for you. Or you validate it and you know that it is good and it is part of a good, healthy frame, and you continue to implement it and stack upon that and keep getting more of the things that, are conducive for your frame, inside and outside of your life. And so I would say having a healthy frame that we determine for ourselves is so important. One thing from my personal experience is that, like, I definitely feel emotion on a deep level. I understand where people are at very easily because I've been everywhere myself. And so I can identify, I know where that person's at. And as a result of that, I used to take on a lot of energy. I used to be very, very susceptible to other people's opinions and beliefs about life, about the way things should be, programming, all these things. Is very susceptible to those things, very energetically sensitive. And that caused my life to be very chaotic in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of, incongruent things that were popping up, and beliefs and habits and things that were playing out that were not conducive for me. And that was causing me to get results that were, less than optimal. And so it's important that you have your own frame. This is a really important lesson that I want to teach everyone who's part of Raveraide. Is it's about building your frame. It's about building your belief system. It's about finding your truth. So then that way you can continue to, expand upon your purpose and the reason that you're actually here, and live in that full frame of, being fully self-actualized and fully self-loved, because that's what I want for each and every single one of us on this planet, more than anything, because I know that if we can heal the humans, we get to heal the planet. And that's, why I'm here. That's why I exist. And so I'm going to give you guys an example of a negative frame, right? And we'll talk through this, and hopefully you pick up on maybe a way in which you've created a negative frame for yourself, or an aspect of yourself that's not, what it could be, because we get to choose. When we become, everything, we get to choose. When we heal our shadows, when we heal those darker parts of ourselves and see it for what it is, we also get to see the lighter sides of ourselves as well. And from that point, we get to make the choice. And that's where the free will comes in. And so an example of a negative frame is, I live in a frame of the world is not fair, or people always take advantage of me. And that's a frame that I used to live in. Why didn't this happen? Why didn't this work out? Why wasn't I born to a wealthier family? Why do other people get advantages that I didn't get? Blah, 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 blah. Stories, frame, right? And that's what created my reality, because the mind will always prove itself right. Like I've mentioned in so many previous episodes, it's going to prove itself right, and for better or worse. And so it was proving itself right in this negative frame that people take advantage of me. So I was drawing people into my experience that validated that belief system, and frequently I was taken advantage of, and I allowed myself to be taken advantage of by people. And as a result of that, I got results that I didn't want, but I still validated my belief system and my frame. And so I still proved myself right, even though it wasn't conducive for me. And so by holding that frame, I invite others into that experience to validate that belief system, whether that be people in our lives, government, colleagues, coworkers, bosses, etc. When we live in those lower vibrational frames, what it does is it actually holds us in that place. So then that way we can never really get past that and see the beauty for what life actually is an opportunity to connect to something greater than ourselves, and contribute in a meaningful way that is truly in alignment with our soul's purpose and why we're actually here. And so when we live in a frame like this, it's always going to prove itself right. So think about this. I want you to take a moment and really think about, in what ways have you lived in a frame that's less than ideal for yourself? Is it a victim consciousness? Is it a financial worry, Is it a feeling of lack? Is it a feeling of guilt? What frame have you lived in? And then also, really, if you want to take it to another level, what experiences have come in as a result of living in that state, by living in that frame? Can you think of any experiences that came as a result of that, by living in worry or fear or a frame of anxiety? Can you think of anything that has come into your life that maybe could have been avoided if you were living in a different frame? And early on, when you're really like discovering who you are, you don't think that there's even another possibility of anything different, but I'm telling you that there is. And so if you've lived a tough life or had a tough journey or an experience, like there is, light at the end of the tunnel. There is a different perspective to see everything through when you heal up those traumas and you really get to the root of everything. So I just want you to become aware of these things and the frame that you're living in, because you're the only one living in that frame and everyone else is validating that around you. And so what happens is when we break down that frame and we start creating something that's more congruent for ourselves, something that's more ideal, we start to see in which ways our interactions with others, with things, with habits, are not congruent and are actually being very detrimental, but at the same time was validating that less than ideal frame that we had, if I could say that any better. But that's kind of really the important thing to know here, is like your frame is going to create the outcomes to your reality, for better or worse. So it might as well be for your greatest benefit. The world needs your greatest benefit anyway and your greatest gifts. So it's time for you to do the healing. It's time for you to start questioning everything and really starting to get down to the bottom of everything. So then that way you can shine bright and be everything that I know that you can be. And so let's hop into like what an example of a healthy frame looks like real quick. And so this is one that I write in my gratitude journal every day. I have 5 main goals that I write down, but this is the one that I'll share with you guys: is I'm happy, healthy, fulfilled, and fully self-actualized. And so it's not quantitative, it's all subjective on how I feel. But that's the frame that I want to live in. That's the frame that I desire to live in. And so I'm healthy in every single way: physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. I'm fulfilled in the work that I do. I'm fulfilled in the purpose that I serve. I'm fulfilled in my relationships. And I'm fully self-actualized. I'm disciplined. I do the things that I know that I need to do on a daily basis, whether I feel like it or not. I live in my truth. I stay congruent with my word. I do the things that are really, going to get me where I want to go, so that way I can serve more people. Do you see how much better that feels and how much better that sounds? Like for all of us, like this isn't just about like my example. This is what you can live in for yourself. You get to determine that. Do you see how much like better that sounds and how much more flowful that is and how much, of a higher frequency that is than talking about people taking advantage of you or not being good enough, and you can just as easily choose, that healthier, better frame for yourself as you can the negative one. It just takes some unwinding and some healing and some processing to be able to see, see it for what it is. So then that way you can actually step into a healthier frame for yourself. And that's, the beauty of doing the work and healing and doing, the things that most people in our society aren't willing to do. And that's why most people in our society live in those negative frames and they don't even realize it. And so this work is for the people who want to be better, who desire to be better. And my suspicion is that if you're listening to something like this podcast and you follow Raveraide, that's why you're here. And that's why I do this every single night, every single Sunday night for you guys, because I want this for my entire community. I want this for everybody that's involved with what we do here. Not just for the people that are, creating the business. And so when we live in this frame, we draw on experiences that validate that frame and that belief system. And I can speak firsthand that when I live in a frame of gratitude, I have so much more flow and ease, and things just kind of come to me. And I draw on way more ideal experiences on a daily basis when I live in that frame. And I don't miss the workouts. I take care of my diet. I do all the things that I know that I need to do on a daily basis to validate that belief system. Because I think one of the biggest things that humans fear is lack of congruency with themselves. And I think that's where a lot of lower vibrational frequency comes in, because they're not living in the frame that they know that they could be living in. The anxiety that people experience comes from them not living in congruence with their full potential. Their worry, same thing. And so when we start living more in congruence with that, that's when we start getting more, of those things that are ideal for us. The anxiety goes away, the worry, the fear, all those things go away, in conjunction with our health being better, which means that our body's vibrating at a better frequency, and that, we're more vibrant and healthy, and, that reduces anxiety and things like that. And so we start breaking down the things that were causing us so many problems in our, less than ideal frame, and we start trading them out for things that are conducive and healthy for us. And then boom, you're living in a new frame where it feels weird to not be living in that frame. It feels weird to not take care of yourself. It feels weird and out of alignment to not, pursue our passions and make a lot of money or do whatever is that we want to do with our life. It feels weird to not do that. So then that way we're able to course correct and get back on track into the healthy frame. The frame is just the parameter for which you operate from. So when I have a frame of I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm vibrant, I'm fully self-actualized and fulfilled, when I'm doing things or things come up that are not of that, what ends up happening is I immediately want to course correct because it doesn't feel comfortable and normal. I feel comfortable when I'm living in the frame of gratitude and happiness more now than I do when I am in a place of anxiety, worry, or fear. So when those things do pop up and I feel those emotions, which it's okay to feel those emotions, I get to a place where I solve the problem that's causing that incongruency with my frame. So then that way I get back into the frame that I created for myself. And I hope that makes sense. I hope that resonates for you guys, because that's really, really important in so many ways, especially with how the world is today, with there being so many distractions and things that pull our attention one way or the other. Having that frame and that standard that we live for ourselves is what's going to keep us on the straight and narrow and get us more of the outcomes that we deserve. And so when we identify to a constructive, healthy frame, it goes against what we believe when we do things that are destructive and not for highest good, just like I mentioned. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I really want to reiterate that, like, we become aware of every single thing that's going on in our life and every single thing that's causing the outcome. And if we spend the majority of our time, 90%, in a healthy frame, that 10% of the time when that person comes in, or that experience, or that thing, or that food, or that temptation comes in, it feels so off to succumb to those things that we immediately want to get back under our frame. And then you start tying in things of like, okay, I do this because I want to be vibrant and healthy for a long time. I don't want to lose my health. I don't want to lose, my vitality, so I can take care of my family and my finances and all these things. You start stacking up all these things that validate that frame, and you have every single reason to continue to live in that frame. Whereas before I lived in a very destructive frame. I was very, very self-destructive in my younger years, very reckless, very, self-sabotaging in so many ways. And that was because I lived in a frame of feeling guilt, of feeling worry, of feeling shame, of feeling not being good enough, of feeling like I messed my life up. All these different things, all these frames were playing out, and it was getting me the results that were less than ideal. And it was all because of me. It was because of the way that I viewed everything. It was because of the frame that I lived in. And when you live in a negative frame, it's everybody else. It's every other situation. It wasn't your fault, blah, blah, blah. And people who live in healthy frames take accountability when they need to take accountability. And that's how they get the results that they want to get. They take, radical, they take accountability, They take accountability for everything. And then from there, they take corrective action. So then that way they can make that change and don't repeat similar mistakes. And so I just really want you guys to know, like, the importance of this. I'm definitely a little bit fired up right now, because I just need you guys to know how important this is, like how important it is to create your own frame. Because for 25 years of my life, I wasn't living in my frame. I didn't live in my truth. I didn't live in my full capacity because I let others dictate my frame. I allowed myself to live in stories and things that were self-deprecating, that weren't putting me in a place of being able to share my gift with the world. I wouldn't have been able to speak words like this 2 to 3 years ago because I didn't believe in myself enough to do so. And now I do, because I live in a different frame, and living in this frame will completely change everything. It changes the scope in which you view the world through. It changes everything. It changes your relationships. It changes the way that you interact with others. It changes the way that you interact with yourself, the way that you see yourself, the way you display compassion for yourself and others. Like, it changes everything. It changes your entire reality. It's almost like you live a completely different life. And that's what I want for you guys. Like, I've had multiple moments, like being in the past like 6 months, where I'm like, this doesn't even feel anything like what I've experienced in my entire life before. Like, what was I missing? How was I missing it? And the reality was, it was the frame that I was living in. And so that's why this is so important. And so I want to share an example with you guys really quickly of a frame that I recognized in myself that I was carrying out, and I caught myself very recently. This is something that's unfolded within the past like month or so. And it just made me realize like how deeply rooted, our subconscious goes and the frame in which we live in. And so I'll share this with you guys real quick. So I saw an example of my father, and he, worked numerous jobs. We didn't have a ton, but we always had what we needed. And my parents always supported us and did everything they could to make sure that we had all the advantages that we needed in life, and, just did everything they could to make sure that we were provided for. Right. But I noticed my father would work 2 to 3 jobs, and he took terrible care of his health. He didn't take care of himself. He ate poorly, got off work, sat on the couch, ate food, passed out, woke up, rinse, wash, repeat, exhausted, right? Not an ideal frame, right? And so what happened was, and I just realized this as of late, was that I was associating making money to being unhealthy, right? And so when I started doing all the things that I'm doing now, the scales kind of tipped a little bit, where I was really focused a ton on my health last year and getting dialed in. That kind of leveled out a little bit, and work became the priority. And so with all the new things that I'm doing, and so my health, started to suffer because of that. And luckily I've had the awareness to recognize, like, okay, like you're missing a workout here, you're doing this, you're not doing this, you're not living in that frame that you created last year for yourself. And I said, why are you doing that? Why is it that every time you go and start having a bunch of success, from a financial standpoint, why is it that your health starts to deteriorate? And obviously it's because, my time is more spread thin, stuff like that. That's a given, right? But it's because I had that frame and association that when you're making money and you're working hard, that you're not healthy. And so when I started to recognize that, I was like, holy shit, that right there is the frame that I'm living in. And it just felt so incongruent. I was like, why is this happening? Like, what's the subconscious pattern here? And just been spending the past couple of weeks really just like unwinding that. And so I saw that frame of making money equals lack of care for my health. And I've seen this frame play out multiple times in my life. This isn't the first time this has happened. This is the first time that I've been hyper aware of it, so I can start making that change. And so seeing that frame, I've questioned it. I spent some time unpacking it, and I started seeing, okay, what's the core cause? It's because I saw that as a child, that my parents slaved for money, and they were not healthy in the process of that. So I've never had an example in my life of, you can be incredibly healthy, incredibly vibrant, and you can have a lot of, career success or financial success. And so seeing that, I'm like, okay, I'm reworking that frame. I'm recreating that frame. So what do? I hit the meditation cushion. I spent time in the float tank today. I spent time in the sauna today, and I just, focus on cementing that and impregnating my subconscious mind with this new belief that I can be incredibly healthy, incredibly vibrant, at the highest, peak of my physical, mental, and spiritual health, and make a lot of money and serve a lot of people and, have a lot of success in whatever endeavor it is without something else being sacrificed as a cause. Right. And again, that is rooted in limitation, because it's saying you're choosing one thing over the other, when it's, when we live in, full expansion, we're able to sit and say, you know what, I can have this, and this is how I'm going to do it. And this is the commitment that I make. And then we take corrective, congruent action to get there. And then as a result of that, we start cementing down that neural pathway of that being our frame. So that way, when we feel ourselves slip or we feel some burnout, then we know that it's time to give ourselves some rest. But also on top of that as well, if we do something that pulls us out of that frame, we're immediately sure to get right back into it. And carry on. So that way we don't have these massive regressions and it takes 3 to 6 months to get back to where we were before. Because I think that's what happens with a lot of people. They have issues with the upper limit syndrome, like we've talked about in previous episodes, where they had the success in one endeavor and then other areas suffer, or they had the success and then they backstep 6 steps. So they're going ahead 5 steps and they're dropping down 3 steps. And then they go ahead 5 steps, they drop down 3 steps. How much could you get done in your life if you were just constantly improving, maybe having slight setbacks and then immediately going back up because you're aware, because of your frame that you created for yourself? That's the question I want you to ask yourself. And so it's, like I said, it's now my time to cement that down and be easy with myself, be compassionate with myself, knowing that I'm unlearning something and creating something better for myself. And, just reminding yourself, hey, you know what? Don't miss that workout. Or, hey, you might need to wake up earlier. Hey, you need to do this. Or, hey, don't eat that particular food. Or, hey, maybe you're working too much. We need to reel it back a little bit so that way you can focus on, making sure that your health's in a good place, because when you're healthy, you get more results with your work, and starting to make that neural connection, that they're not mutually exclusive, that they're one and the same, and they're very important to, the success of the other. When I'm healthier and I feel vibrant, I do better with my work. I serve more people. Vice versa. When I serve more people and I feel good, then I'm more likely to exercise and make sure that my diet's in perfect shape and that my microbiome's clean and, all these different things, right? And so it's all about cementing that frame and holding yourself in that frame. And I hold myself in a frame of compassion and understanding and empathy for myself, which is something that I didn't do for a very long time, for the 25 plus years of my life, if not longer than that. And so it's a completely different world that we live in when we change the scope in which we view it through. And so what I want to wrap this episode up with is I want to invite you guys, to participate in your own exercise of creating your own frame. And so I recommend, as always, that you have some sort of journal that you're writing in. I think journaling is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself for personal development and progression and gaining more awareness. And so I want you to ask yourself, what is the ideal frame? What's your ideal frame? What's it look like? What does it feel like? And we start to create that frame. Are you healthy? What kind of exercise are you doing? How do you eat? Where do you eat? Who do you eat with? What do you do for work? What do you do for your mission and purpose? How do you spend your time? How disciplined are you? What frame do you hold yourself in? What things do you do every day that are challenging? Do you get in a cold plunge? Do you sauna? Do you meditate? Do you take your supplements? As part of your frame, taking Raveraide every single day, like it is for me. And so it's one of those things where it's like you create the frame down to a detail and you start cementing that. And then eventually your subconscious mind gives into those plans and those ideas. The subconscious mind doesn't care if it's for better or for worse. It just has orders that it's running. It's like a perfect example. I can't remember where I read this, but it's like the conscious mind is the captain of the ship, and the subconscious mind is the men and women down below rowing the boat. They're rowing and rowing and rowing and rowing. They don't know where they're going. They just know that they're rowing. And the conscious mind is giving it the instructions of where we're going, where we're steering the ship. You're steering the ship, and through your conscious mind, what you're doing is you are giving instructions to your subconscious mind, and after enough time, the subconscious mind gets on the same page and it carries out that frame, it carries out that belief system, and that's how you get the results that happen in your life on a daily basis. And that's how everything in your life plays out. And so now that you know that, I want you to do the exercise of creating your frame. What is your frame? How do you feel? Who do you spend your time with? How much money do you make? What type of passion and purpose do you have? What do you do for your career? Where do you vacation? Who do you vacation with? Why do you do what you do on a daily basis? Create the frame, create the standard for your life, and you're going to get more of the results that you deserve for yourself every single day, day in and day out. And when something incongruent pops up, a person, a thing, an experience, an enticement pops up, then you're able to easily say, that's not part of my frame. That's not who I am. That's not for my greatest good and my most ideal outcome. And as a result of that, you're much more easily able to say no. You're much more easily able to stay within the bounds of your frame So then that way you can stay on track and actualize that most self-loved and self-actualized version of yourself that we're all capable of experiencing in this lifetime. No matter where you're at, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are right now, you can be more than you were yesterday by being more than you were then by now, like by being that now, so that tomorrow you can be everything that you've ever wanted to be. And so, without further ado, guys, and it's been a little bit of a long episode, but this is just a really important thing that I want to teach everyone, and something that has really changed and altered the course of my life. And so, I hope that you guys found something useful in this, found something that resonates for you. We are planning on being at some festivals in Florida in March. Which ones, I'm not entirely sure yet, but just keep an eye out for us. We're going to be kicking off the festival season in a great way. We're still working on that big project that I can't announce yet, but yeah, things are just looking good, guys. And it's because of amazing people like you. Without you guys, it wouldn't be possible. So I'm so grateful for each and every single one of you guys who tune in on a daily and weekly basis and support what we're doing here at Raveraide, because quite honestly, you're allowing me to live my dream, and you're allowing the team to live their dream as well by creating such an awesome product and service for you guys. So without further ado, guys, my name is Tyler Hardy. Be sure to check us out at www.drinkraveraide.com and use the code Raveraide Podcast for a discount at checkout. We'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.